Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Growth Digger, where we talk about everything growth, not just at the top of the funnel through creative marketing, but across the funnel and life cycle of the customers, be it through great customer service, sales ops, innovation, branding, anything and everything that can foster growth. I'm very fortunate to have Roy Reid as our guest today. Roy is a career marketing, communications, and PR genius. He has spent about 35 years in the industry before he started his own company where he mentors and coaches both executives as well as business founders in how to foster growth. And more importantly, and this is very close to my heart as well, is foster growth through trust. And I do certainly believe that trust is the cornerstone of relationships, or strong relationships, I must say, that last a long time. And that's what usually is required to build a lasting business as well. So welcome, Roy, to the show. And if you would like to add anything to your introduction, please go ahead.
Taran, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here, and always love an opportunity to talk to people about how trust is such an important part of our lives, both in the personal side and the professional side. I have, as you mentioned, spent about 35 years in the business, and a lot of that in the healthcare space, where trust is tested on a regular basis, very much on the front line. And about probably 15 years ago in my journey, I really started asking this question, is how do we better understand trust? How does it work? At the time, I was a partner at a public relations firm. And as those things began to take shape and those ideas became to really drive doing, in 2016, I was recruited to go to work for Advent Health, which is one of the largest not-for-profit healthcare systems in the United States. And their education team took the content and challenged me and to really work on creating a program that they could train employees, those on the front line, to really understand the power of trust. And what I love about that partnership was I brought in a co-author, Dr. O'Mara Mansfield, an emergency physician, and we really began to unpack not only how trust improved your performance, improved the outcomes of the things that happened at work, but its impact on your health and being, and how when you lean into it and when you really have high trust relationships, right? Because the end game of trust is the relationships that we have, the relationship beginning with ourselves. And we discovered through our research that there have high trust relationships, not only are you getting better results in the workplace, but you're getting better results in your healthcare and the things that you're doing. And so that's the passion that drives it. That's what gets me up every morning and gets me excited, is knowing that as I work with executives and leaders and entrepreneurs and founders, that in the end, when we unpack this idea of trust and we apply it and we're intentional with it, just so many good things happen.
I totally agree with you. And what I typically like to do, Roy, is ask about an example, because we're, as the name says, growth diggers. So we really like to talk about growth. So would love to hear from you of an example where either the factor of trust or something that you did that really helped transform growth, either for a client of yours or the companies that you were working for, basically.
No, I love the question. And one of the great things about trust is it has tangible results. It's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot. And in business, we like to call certain things hard topics and other things soft topics. And this one gets lumped into soft topics a lot, which implies that it may be optional. But I would say one of the best stories I could share occurred right as I jumped into this work. I was brought in by an hospital CEO who had been tasked with turning a hospital around. So the organization that he was with had purchased this hospital from another group, and by all accounts, it was failing. All the numbers were on the downside. So they were performing at the lowest 25% in patient satisfaction or customer satisfaction. and they were performing at the lowest 5% when it came to hospital-based infections or clinical outcomes. And so that means you didn't want to go there. You weren't going to have a good experience and you weren't going to have a good outcome. So any business that's looking at its numbers, when you're not performing on operations and you're not performing on how you engage people, you've got to flip that around. So what we do is we go in and we train the leadership team. We spend a day with them really unpacking the ideas of how trust works and what are the small pieces and what do you need to do. But it's really in the outcome of that training session, which is that they develop what we call a trust contract. And that's something that goes into your cultural construct. So you have your mission, your vision, your values, your service standards, all important in setting the direction, all important in setting how people are going to engage. What the trust contract does is adds a dimension of how we're going to prioritize relationships, how we're going to prioritize them inside and outside the organization. So you adopt it, you agree on it, you sign it, and you implement it. And it becomes a source of both inspiration. How should I behave? What should I look for? What am I aspiring to? But also accountability that says if you have a trouble or an engagement with someone that's going bad, you look at the contract first. You live by the principles that are expressed there. A year later, the CEO came and sat with me for an interview where I was really putting myself at the accountability level, saying, how did it work? What's happened since then? Yeah. All of those numbers had flipped. They were now operating in the top 75% for customer and patient satisfaction and the top 95% for hospital-based infections. And when he came to see me, they had gone 6 months with 0 infections. And I asked him, Tim, how do you attribute this to the work that we did? His answer was, everything works better when people trust each other. And when there's a high level of trust in an organization, people feel safe to speak up and say something's wrong. People are not afraid to offer their input or have a candid conversation. And people are intentional about doing the right thing because they're living up to that higher level of integrity every single day, and it's right in front of them. And so what I would say to the listeners is the first idea that they could implement today is to be intentional about trust and be brave enough to step in and ask the questions that need to be asked about your organization.
And I think it's not just within the four walls of the organization. Obviously, it starts within the four walls, but I think it's also the trust that you build with your customers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most important. Like, that's one of our key lessons and guiding principles at Growth Natives. That's like the company that I'm the CEO and founder at. I started the company about 5 years ago, and I started with 6 people. We're today about 375 people strong. Even in down years, we've recorded really tremendous growth. And I attribute it to just really one thing, and that is doing good work, always being transparent, and always being focused on customer success and putting the customer first. And what that has really led to is a whole lot of trust with our customers. Our customers trust us. Why? We're in the digital transformation services industry. My first 5 customers that I signed up in 2019 are still my customers. And usually it doesn't last this long in our space. And the only reason is because they really trust us. And I think that's the one thing I have learned just through my experiences is that if you are able to build trust, you're able to build lasting relationships. At the end of the day, whether you are doing business or you're doing like personal transactions, you're working with people. People like to work with people they trust. Very simple as that.
Now, you hit it on right. We seek out to work with people that we know and trust. And you hit upon something that's important too, and that's understanding sort of the idea of people, right? And so one of the things we talk about with our customers or clients is trust is built on 2 primary drivers. One's an emotional driver, and then the other's experiential, right? So you have that emotional connection with people, that you like them, you're engaged with them, but it's that experiential plane that over time, if you're performing, if you're delivering, if you're following up, if you fix your mistakes and those types of things, that's the long-term game. That's where it really plays out.
Yeah, if somebody likes you but doesn't trust you, that doesn't take you too far. How many times we hear that? I like you, but I don't really trust you,
That's
basically.
right. That's right. A lot of people get half the equation right, and then they never see the real fulfillment of what it should be. It's got to be all of it.
Yeah, you have to be a likable person that can be trusted as well, not just like somebody who's likable but not trustworthy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and there's a guiding principle that goes with that. It says that you keep your promises, but you communicate consistently. Because even the best of us are going to make mistakes, and we're going to have a bad day. Something's going to go wrong, and as long as we're fostering that connection with that person, and they never feel like they're lost or that there's a vacuum there, you're gonna be able to repair or restore a situation that might go bad.
Great. Yeah, let's talk about that. How you just mentioned you restore a situation if it has gone bad. What is your advice to folks that, hey, they are in a situation, either they overpromised and were not able to deliver, or like they didn't understand what the customer was looking for, and then they're in the situation where, hey, I am at this point going to lose the trust of my customer. So how do you deal with those situations?
The first thing that we have to step into is the idea of humility. That idea that we aren't all things, and we will fail in those engagements. And so initially, I would say it takes the integrity of really confronting and admitting something's not going the way it should. If you've done something wrong, if you've failed in delivering, a real sincere engagement and apology is necessary. You've got to be able to admit that. A lot of times we let our pride get in the way of something that's going wrong, and we don't want to admit that perhaps we did overpromise, that we have exceeded our area of expertise, that we're a little bit over our skis, as they say, in a situation. And not being able to admit that can really be damaging. And then fix it. It's going to cost some money. It's going to cost some time. It's going to be an investment on your part. But you have to restore that. You have to make good on the things that you say that you're going to do. And really, it always comes down to a lot of little things. Trust doesn't just happen because you walked in the door with a big smile on your face and a lot of promises. Trust happens because over time you've said and done things that have proven to be true. There's a study that the group Edelman, which is a large PR firm, does every year called the Trust Barometer. And every year it seems that when they survey the 35,000 people in that study, we see an erosion of trust across a lot of different areas. In fact, most areas. And in 2021, the big headline of their trust barometer was that distrust has become the default human emotion. So you think about that for a minute and really understand that means when you meet someone for the first time, you're behind because their inclination is not to trust you. And so we have a lot of work to do in business, in government, in public areas, and even just in a lot of our personal relationships. And when you look at what we've been through worldwide over the last 5 years, it's easy to understand where people might have a loss of trust. And so being intentional, being mindful, being humble in those engagements, and listening a lot more than we talk oftentimes is the key.
Great. And Roy, if I'm not mistaken, you've also written a book. Tell us a little bit about that so that the listeners, if they are interested in investing themselves and learning about how to build trust and how to go about using it pragmatically in their personal and professional lives, they can get access to it. So just where the book is and how they can get their hands on it.
Sure. The book is called The Trust Transformation. It is also co-authored by my friend and colleague, Dr. Omira Mansfield. And really, we took everything that we learned as people went through the training program we developed at Advent Health, but then also as we've worked with organizations outside. So there's some wonderful stories about companies, small construction companies to big organizations that have really leaned into these principles and ideas that we outline there. And people can buy it wherever books are sold, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and others. And they can see more about it and learn more about the work that I'm doing at roywreid.com.
Perfect. It's roywreid.com.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Roy, for being a wonderful guest. I truly believe trust is a cornerstone for unleashing growth in any situation. And I'm glad that we got connected. And I'm sure our listeners would have learned a thing or two from today's conversation. And more importantly, if they want to know more about how to use trust, they can go seek out your book. Good luck with everything. And thank you for being a wonderful guest.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to following. You guys have a wonderful and engaging presence. I've looked at your Instagram account. You guys have do great business and have a lot of fun doing it too.
Yeah, we do actually. So never a dull moment at Growth Natives.